Hey, my name is Paul. I am the education coordinator at Film Streams in Omaha, Nebraska. Let's talk about film. I want to look at environmentalism in film. I think environmentalism has been a very popular theme in a lot of different films, genres, and spaces around the world. And I don't think an environmentalist message or the popularity of environmentalism in film is going to change anytime soon. The first thing I want to say is that I am not a scientist. This video is not going to be a bunch of scientific facts and hard evidence, mostly because the films that I watched really didn't offer any of those, and also because if I pretended to know what I was talking about when it comes to environmental science or ecology, I would feel like a liar. So what I wanted to do with this video is look at a selection of films and bring up some common themes that I found in these environmental movies. Ultimately, I want to discuss how films with an environmental message or theme might affect the way that viewers think or interact with their natural environment. I have two big questions. What themes are important to these films' narratives? And according to these films, how should viewers interact with their natural environment? Advocacy of the preservation, restoration, or improvement of the natural environment, especially the movement to control pollution. Political and ethical movement that seeks to improve and protect the quality of the natural environment through changes to environmentally harmful human activities. Environmentalism is a philosophy and a social movement with the goal to protect nature. I think that definition can work for everyone here, so let's get started. I watched 6 films for this video. I ended up choosing 2 Studio Ghibli films, Princess Mononoke and Pompoko. Both films are made in Japan and they're both heavily influenced by an environmental message. I had to include some really typical disaster movies too, right? The Day After Tomorrow and The Happening. These were a pure joy to watch. I'm talking warm, fuzzy feelings that invigorated my hope for the future. Lastly, I wanted to include some marginal voices too. Woman at War and Beast of the Southern Wild. These last 2 films focus on women and BIPOC experiences with environmentalism. Let's start with the absolute end of the world. Every single film I watched had some sort of cataclysmic event that shows just how insignificant humans are in the face of Mama Nature. Do not mess with her. So in a lot of these films, the apocalypse was a huge theme. The world is in immediate danger of becoming inhabitable to some degree. Our homes and therefore our lives are at risk. In The Day After Tomorrow, melting ice caps are changing the salinity of our oceans and its currents. This is drastically affecting our climate, and soon extreme polar temperatures cover almost the entirety of the northern hemisphere. I'm talking walk outside and become an honest-to-God instant popsicle in seconds. Do you know how many people actually live in the northern hemisphere? Go ahead, take a guess, I'm gonna wait. 6.4 billion people. That's about 87% of the world's population. So in the film Day After Tomorrow, about 90% of humanity can be potentially wiped out. The Happening provides a more creative way to show humans what's up. In this film, plants begin to spread a neurotoxin that creates an extreme suicidal urge in humans. This instance begins in the northeastern United States, but it quickly begins to spread. No humans are safe from the plants. Basically, extremely human-dense areas like major cities are attacked by these plants releasing this neurotoxin. In this film, the plants are fighting back against human expansion in a truly gruesome and disturbing way. Any hope for survival is to disband and leave the large city centers for less human-occupied areas. So how does the theme of an environmental apocalypse suggest how viewers should interact with our natural environment? Well, I think what these films are trying to say is that viewers should immediately begin to think about how we interact with our world and how to protect it from harm. Are these films saying that if we don't act immediately, that plants are going to begin to kill us off? No, not exactly. I think these films are using film and entertainment to show what could happen, irreversible and cataclysmic damage to our world. And I think they're also showing us that humans have a huge part to play in avoiding these outcomes. I think there's a reason why a lot of environmental films fit into genres or subgenres like horror or disaster movies. And I think that's because the apocalypse is really scary. Any viewer who doesn't want the world to end is going to watch these films and think to themselves, okay, how do I not end up like that? These films can really jumpstart our actions when it comes to thinking about how to maintain and sustain a healthy natural environment. Okay, I think we've talked enough about the apocalypse. Let's move on to a lighter topic. Patriarchy is a term used in feminism to describe the system of gender-based hierarchy in society, which assigns most power to men and assigns higher value to men, maleness, and masculine traits, deeming it oppressive for women and people of non-binary genders. I know what you're thinking. What does the patriarchy have to do with environmental films? And surprisingly enough, patriarchal ideologies were pretty frequent within the films that I watched. I want to specifically look at how traditional gender roles might affect the way that viewers interact with our natural environment. The central characters of Pom Poko are a group of tanuki, which are dog-like, raccoon-like creatures. In Pom Poko, the tanuki are being displaced by a new housing development that's taking over their forest, and they've decided that enough is enough and they're going to start fighting back against the humans. In Japanese culture and folklore, tanuki are playful creatures. They're often trickster characters, and they can even transform themselves into objects, other animals, or people. In Pom Poko, the tanuki's transformation is their greatest weapon against the encroaching humans. The tanuki who are best at complex transformations are male. The male tanuki are the fighters. This idea supports the harmful notion that men are better protectors or saviors than women, or that men are more capable of accomplishing their goals than women. This is an oppressive idea instilled by patriarchal power structures and perpetuated through Pom Poko. We also see the idea of the male protector or savior in The Day After Tomorrow and The Happening. In The Day After Tomorrow, Jack Hall is a paleoclimatologist who sounds the alarm that the world is heading towards some pretty spooky looking climate-related weather changes. These changes could drastically and devastatingly change our environment. These changes happen faster than anyone can anticipate, and the world quickly descends into a neo-ice age. Jack's son, Sam, is left stranded in New York City, surrounded by killer polar temperatures. And against Jack's own scientific advice to hunker down, he decides to brave the storm and travel from DC to New York City to save his son.
Sam, listen to me. Listen very carefully. Forget what I said about trying to head south. It's too late for that. The storm is just going to get worse. It's going to turn into a massive blizzard with an eye in the center of it, just like a huge hurricane. Only the air is going to be so cold you could freeze to death in seconds. I will come for you. Do you understand me? I will come for you.
So that makes sense, right? A parent trying to save their kid is not an outrageous idea. However, Sam has another parent too. Dr. Lucy Hall is a physician at a hospital, and that sounds great, right? Representation of women in STEM is a total win. However, her role in The Day After Tomorrow is largely superficial, and she doesn't affect the narrative in any tangible way. What we see most of in this film is Jack and his son Sam battling threat after threat to protect and save the people around them. Jack and his son Sam are immediately responsible for the lives of countless people from the dangers of this neo-ice age. So focusing a majority of the narrative of The Day After Tomorrow around men saving or protecting people might reinforce the same ideology we found in Pom Poko, that men get things done and that men protect people. Let's keep going. In The Happening, mass suicides start to spread across the East Coast. Elliot, a high school science teacher, and his wife Alma decide to travel away from a densely populated city center to escape what they think might be a terrorist attack. Elliot is one of the first people who realizes what's really going on, that plants are causing all these suicides. So, how does The Happening support patriarchal gender roles? Well, surprise, Elliot is the one calling all the shots and protecting everyone in this small group of survivors that he's traveling with. Elliot's a very rational and analytical character. Then we have his wife Alma. Fun fact, Alma means soul or spirit in Spanish, and I do not think that that is a coincidence. Alma is often the morality of the film. She urges Elliot and the group to do what is right. To be fair, Alma is also a bit of a protector. But who does she protect? The young motherless girl who's traveling with them. Throughout the movie, Alma's main role is coded as wife and mother. So we have Elliot, a male protector who is making tough choices and getting to the bottom of the mystery. And then we have Alma, who is a moral figure and a female protector of children. Okay, so I might sound a little pessimistic and lectury right now, so please allow me to smash my own observations. Woman at War is a wonderful film. Hala is our main character, and honestly, she's a total badass.
Ef þú getur hugsað að hjálpa mér, þá verður það að gerast núna. Þeir eru að leita mér.
Og hvað hefur þú gert að þér?
Ég sló út háspennulínurnar.
Já, svo það þá þú?
Já.
Þetta þá í 5. skipti. Og hvað þú einaverki?
Já. Ekki glæpamaður. Ég að reyna að stöðva glæpi og skemmdarverk gegn okkur öllum.
In Woman at War, we have a very tough and principled woman actively working to protect her community and environment from harm in really dynamic ways. Hala's even a mother. In this film, Hala receives some life-changing and wonderful news that her adoption has been approved and there's a young girl in Ukraine waiting for her. So I think Woman at War does a great job at subverting patriarchal gender roles. Hala is a mother in the film, but she's also a protector, and not just a protector of her child, but of an entire community and country and environment. Please watch this film. It is good and it's cool and everyone should see it. Let's keep smashing. I have 2 more women I want to talk about who are doing work against environmental harm. San from Princess Mononoke and Hush Puppy from Beasts of the Southern Wild. Both are young women who are getting things done. San is a wolf princess obsessed with dismantling a nearby iron factory that's completely ruining her home in the forest and threatening a local forest deity. She rides her sibling wolves into battle against the ironworkers and is incredibly deadly. San is proof that women can be successful against threats to our environments. Lastly, we have Little Hush Puppy in Beasts of the Southern Wild. Hush Puppy is a 6-year-old living with her father in a bayou called the Bathtub.
Come on, Mark! Beast it! Beast it!
After a massive storm causes major flooding, the bathtub becomes inhospitable. Hush Puppy and her father, along with members of the community, try to destroy the levee that would drain the current water and restore the bathtub. Meanwhile, prehistoric creatures called aurochs are released from melting ice caps and are charging straight for the bathtub and destroying everything in their path. As small as Hush Puppy is, she still has a lot of power in this film. She's the one who pulls the trigger and detonates the explosive that drains the bathtub and saves her community. And she even bravely stands in the path of the auroch and keeps them from destroying the bathtub at the end of the film. So where does this leave us? How do themes of gender roles in environmental films affect how viewers might interact with our natural environment? Well, I think we can look at these films as a developing conversation. A conversation that says, traditionally based on oppressive patriarchal ideologies, saving the environment has always been seen as a man's job. But that is ridiculous. Thankfully, because of films like Woman at War, Princess Mononoke, and Beasts of the Southern Wild, I think this conversation is shifting. I think films like this communicate that women can be just as successful in protecting and saving our natural environment as men, and that women belong in the fight too. And honestly, anyone of all genders should be invested in how we interact with the natural environment. On to the next theme. Man, these are some really heavy topics. You know what? We're gonna have a 10-second dance break. Okay, back to business. Environmental threats do not affect everyone in equal ways. Environmental racism is the disproportionate impact on environmental hazards on people of color. The environmental justice movement is an intergenerational, multiracial, and international movement that promotes environmental, economic, and social justice by recognizing the direct link between economic, environmental, and health issues and demanding a safe, clean community and workplace. Beasts of the Southern Wild is a great film for a lot of different reasons. It's both imaginative and realistic. It's beautifully shot and acted, and we've already talked about how Hush Puppy is a strong and capable champion for dynamic environmental action. This film also shows the real and heartbreaking inequity certain people face from environmental issues. Beasts of the Southern Wild spends a lot of time establishing the setting, which is lovingly called the Bathtub by the community who lives there. This community is largely BIPOC. The bathtub is a lively and special place for those who live there. After the bathtub is flooded by a massive storm, state officials declare the area unfit and forcibly relocate this community to shelters. The bathtub's community is stripped of all autonomy as they lose their homes, their relationships, and their identities. Because of environmental racism, the bathtub until this point has been largely ignored by the same state that deemed it unfit. The lack of resources put into this community ultimately leads to part of its destruction. Then, environmental injustice occurs when instead of helping the residents of the bathtub recover their homes or provide adequate resources to rebuild or tools to succeed, state officials simply remove this community and put them into the system that has ignored them to this point. And remember, we're experiencing all of this through the eyes of a 6-year-old. Beasts of the Southern Wild shows the reality of environmental racism and injustice through the imaginative eyes of a young person. Hush Puppy only knows what life is like inside the bathtub. Viewers, on the other hand, get an insider look at how environmental threats and hazards are not the same for everyone. Hopefully, films like Beasts of the Southern Wild can encourage viewers to think about how certain privileges can play a huge part in how people experience environmental issues differently. Overall, I think there were some really cool themes that were explored in the films that I watched. Complex female characters kicking butt against environmental issues and in direct opposition to institutional patriarchal oppression, that's pretty cool. I think drawing attention to how some people or communities experience environmental issues differently is super helpful. And finally, using genres like horror or disaster films to create like a kickstart in the conversation can be really effective. I mean, it's hard to watch a film where a person turns into a human popsicle and not think to yourself, man, I do not want that to happen to me. And while these aren't probably the most scientific ways to start thinking or talking about how we can beneficially interact with our natural environments, I think at least it's a start. But at the end of the day, I think the thing that's most important is that we listen to scientists.
My name is Elliot Moore. I'm just going to talk in a very positive manner, giving off good vibes. We're just here to use the bathroom, and then we're just going to leave. I hope that's okay. Plastic.
Okay, maybe not that scientist, but you get what I mean. Bye.